समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
Last week, American President Donald Trump shocked the world by advocating a resumption of the testing of nuclear weapons. No one knows quite what's on his mind. He claimed that Russia, China, and Pakistan had been carrying out some tests, though experts dispute that finding. What we do know is that his comments came in the wake of the test of some highly intriguing Russian super weapons. And in this episode of Security Code, I'll be explaining how those weapons are significant for their politics and political messaging rather than their technology itself. Thank you once again for joining this episode of Security Code. Fingers dancing over the black and white keys, physicist Theodore Merkel accompanied the bawdy songs being belted out by his crew on the piano perched on the back of the truck lurching into the village of Mercury, Arizona. Their very unscientist-like elation could be shared with no one. Earlier that afternoon, on the 14th of May 1961, on a great arid plain called Jackass Flats, Merkel's crew had fired up a giant bright red device roughly the size and shape of a steam locomotive. It was designed to power a cruise missile flying at treetop level for thousands of kilometers at 3 times the speed of sound. The project's leadership had codenamed it Pluto for the Roman god of the dead, who was devoured by his father Saturn and then vomited out with his siblings into the universe. Last week, President Vladimir Putin announced his own Pluto, the 9M730 Burevestnik cruise missile, which made its first successful long-endurance flight, traversing more than 14,000 kilometers over 15 hours with its nuclear-powered ramjet engine. The endurance of a nuclear-powered engine is unimaginable compared with those powered by conventional fuels. This means the Burvesnik, which is Russian for Storm Petrel, can evade air defenses by taking circuitous routes around the globe or by loitering near the targets but out of radar range for days or weeks or months. Even though Putin had unveiled the Burevestnik as one of 6 super weapons back in 2018, its nuclear-powered engine, which we've seen in action for the first time, is no radical technological breakthrough. The strategic concept underpinning the Burevestnik would have been completely familiar to the engineers who were celebrating the first successful test of a nuclear-powered engine at Mercury more than 6 decades ago. Less than 2 months after Merkel's team successfully tested an advanced version of their nuclear ramjet in 1964, producing the equivalent of over 150 kilonewtons of thrust, or the maximum power of both the Rafale's 2 engines firing together, the program was shut down. Even though the weapon, called the Tory 2C engine, could have traversed a staggering 37,000 kilometers, competing technologies like the intercontinental ballistic missile offered long-range nuclear warhead delivery at lower cost and with far fewer risks. This raises the obvious question of why Russian nuclear strategists, familiar with the sound reasoning behind America's decision to abandon nuclear ramjet propulsion, have now invested in the Burevestnik and other new categories of weapons. The answer lies in the disturbing unraveling of the global nuclear order, which has long mitigated the risks of war between the 3 superpowers by laying down some rules for the game. The second decade of the Cold War was a fantastic time to be a mad scientist. The roseate optimism that marked the end of World War II was shattered by the Korean conflict in 1950, leading many strategists to conclude that nuclear war between the superpowers was inevitable, perhaps even imminent. Fear led politicians to commission ever larger nuclear bombs and ever faster combat jets to deliver them, as well as more eccentric projects like our radiation spewing rocket that tossed out thermonuclear bombs as it traveled over the countryside. Engineers working with fuel hungry jet engines, you see, had begun hitting trade offs between speed and range. They saw nuclear engines as a potential solution. Clarence Kelly Johnson, an aeronautical engineer who designed many legendary aircraft like the Lockheed U-2 and SR-71 Blackbird, noted that, I quote, "The advent of a type of power plant that will solve the range problem is of the utmost importance. Lightweight materials to shield human crews from radioactivity did not then exist, so creating such an aircraft posed special challenges. The Americans did try. From 1956, an experimental reactor was fitted to a Convair NB-36H strategic bomber, with the original crew cabin replaced by an 11-ton nose section lined with lead and rubber. To further protect against radiation escaping from the reactor, 9 water-filled shield tanks were fitted into the central fuselage. The NB-36H made 47 flights from July 1955 to March 1957, with the reactor going critical for the first time in flight in September 1955, though it wasn't actually coupled to the engines. The project, then declassified documents show, was killed off in 1959 after it became clear no one could commit to a deadline for its completion. The technological challenges were just too formidable. An uncrewed missile, though, allowed for substantial reductions in weight and complexity, though the ramjet still needed special ceramic components to survive the 2500 degrees Celsius temperatures of the reactor core, as well as environmental factors where missiles would be based, such as rain or snow and salt water. Amazingly, these porcelain components were supplied by the Coors Porcelain Company, an offshoot of the brewers of Coors Beer, which created 500,000 ceramic fuel components that were used in the reactor. Even though Pluto had an engine now, the missile it was meant to power, called the Supersonic Low Altitude Missile, or SLAM, had not moved past the design stage. The challenge would almost certainly have been met, but a growing rank of critics began asking just what mission Pluto was meant for. The lack of a clear answer led to the project being terminated. For all the magnificence of the technical achievements of Merkel and his team, the Burevestnik now faces the same questions. The missile, unlike Pluto's SLAM, is subsonic, making it easier to intercept than many other platforms in existence. The missile's long loiter times and extended range are very useful, but there's a flip side to them, which is that they give defenders more time to locate and shoot it down. The operational risks are obviously high. Fission reactors, as Chernobyl and Fukushima demonstrated, can cause catastrophic problems, and a 2019 Burevestnik accident is reported to have claimed the lives of a number of scientists. The genesis of the Burevestnik and its sister superweapons instead lies in something called the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, or ABM, which was signed between the United States and the Soviet Union in 1971. The treaty gave both countries the right to operate a single anti-ballistic missile site. That is, a single site from where they could fire weapons to bring down other ballistic weapons. The Soviet Union chose to protect Moscow with A-135 nuclear-armed interceptor missiles. The United States set up its own ABM base at Grand Forks in North Dakota. For nuclear strategists, limiting a nation-state's ability to defend itself from attack made perfect sense. The whole point of deterrence, after all, is ensuring unacceptable damage. An ABM race, it was believed, would only lead adversaries to expand their arsenals to ensure some warheads still got through, which would, of course, achieve nothing as both sides enhance their abilities. In 2002, though, President George W. Bush's government withdrew from the ABM treaty, confident that cash-strapped post-Soviet Russia simply could not match its own progress in ABM technology. The US claimed it needed ABM systems to protect against potential attacks by so-called rogue states with small arsenals like North Korea or Iran. As America's ABM systems became more effective, though, Russia and China also began to invest in exotic technologies to defeat them. Both arsenals began expanding their arsenal of large ICBMs capable of carrying multiple independently targeted warheads or MIRVs, as well as glide vehicles and hypersonic missiles which can evade defenses by flying at more than 5 times the speed of sound. The push has accelerated since earlier this year when President Donald Trump announced he was seeking a ballistic missile defense system to protect the entirety of the United States. At least some of Moscow's new technologies are likely designed to help expand its arsenal and counter this future threat of a ballistic defense missile shield, but while remaining in compliance with a treaty called New START. Signed in 2010, the New START treaty limits both the United States and Russia to an arsenal of 1,550 intercontinental ballistic missiles, deployed submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and deployed heavy bombers. 1,550. Although some of Russia's new weapons, such as the Sarmat ICBM, fall within New START definitions, the Burevestnik and the Poseidon underwater nuclear drone arguably do not. This gives Russia something to trade against America's ABMs. The real problem is that ABM systems may be buying nuclear states the mere illusion of security. As nuclear non-proliferation expert Sam Lair notes, missile defense resembles a sieve more than a shield, filtering out only a given percentage of incoming warheads. Arrow 3 and SM-3 interceptors, the state of art in the United States, knocked out 15 of 180 Iranian missiles mid-course in their trajectory, that is, up on their ballistic trajectory in the middle, during the recent 12-day war for $8 million per hit. 45 of the 165 missiles that made it through this first layer of interception hit their targets, the rest being intercepted at their terminal stage. Now, these are impressive results, but they're very, very far from the impenetrable missile shield Trump is promising voters. As the number of incoming missiles increases, as it would if Russia or China were involved rather than Iran, or the density of interceptors decreases, as it would over a giant area like the continental United States, so would the holes in the sieve. The nuclear sanity clawed back through the START Treaty and other nuclear agreements through the Cold War is now at a real risk of being lost by leaders seduced by the idea that they can make their own territory invulnerable. The Burevestnik test makes clear that nuclear nation states will search for means to go under, over, or around ABM defenses, leading the world into an expensive technology race with profoundly uncertain outcomes. As scholar Barton Hacker notes, the Pluto story needs more attention. It shows that technological achievement is not in itself a strategic end. Because I can belongs in the lexicon of the professional adventurer or the juvenile delinquent, not the nuclear warfighter. I'm Praveen Swami and I'm a contributing editor to ThePrint. Thank you for watching this episode of Security Code.